This week, we're going to talk about mixing rock and metal guitars. So I'm a guitar player, so this video is like very important to me. The way I approach mixing is very different from how I would dial in a tone if I was actually playing guitar. When we have distorted guitars in a mix, it gets really tricky because essentially we're just adding in a square wave of like white noise. That's what a distorted guitar pretty much sounds like. And it occupies so much of the frequency spectrum that we need to make sure that the rest of the song has space to breathe and to punch and to add impact. So in this video, I'm going to show you 3 different strategies that I use for dialing in guitars so you can have a massive and powerful metal and rock mix. Hey, if you don't know me, I'm Bobby Balo, the mixing and mastering engineer at Raytown Productions, and I help home studio owners and bedroom producers make better sounding music without needing expensive gear. If you're new here, thank you so much for watching this video today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button because I release new videos every single week. And as a thank you for watching this video, I put together an awesome free downloadable guide that has all of my favorite free mixing and mastering plugins. So if you don't necessarily have some of the plugins that I'm using in this video, there's a lot of free good tools in that PDF that you can download that'll do good enough of a job. There's also a bunch of really awesome free amp sims in there, so be sure to grab your copy. There's a link in the description. All right, so I'm pulling you into a session. This is by a band called Venom in Spirit, and this track is called Violent Balance. So I'm going to start by just playing a little bit of this song. So man, I mean, there is a lot going on here, right? We have 170 different tracks. So there's lots of vocal layers. We have lots of these production elements. There's multiple layers of synths. The guitars are like 4, 6, or 8 tracked on this track. So what do you do when you're trying to get guitars to fit in with so many different other elements in a song? Hopefully I can show you some cool tricks. And I think the idea of how people go out mixing guitars is fundamentally flawed. I'll preface this with, I'm a guitar player, but I find that a lot of times people, when they're mixing guitars, is they'll dial in their tone and they won't deviate from that. They'll think, that's my guitar tone, don't touch it, that's what I want it to sound like. But when you have all these different things, you need to have a really good talk with yourself and find out what the most important production elements are for your song, or what is the focus for this part of the song. And so the guitar tone shouldn't be static the whole way through. Really, you should be doing some sort of automation to change it depending on if it should be highlighted or if you want to pull it back. And when you have that balance, that's when you can get a guitar track or a guitar tone that fits in with the song. The first trick I want to show you is when you're EQing your guitar, you don't want to listen to the guitar when you're EQing. That sounds crazy, but what you want to do is take the EQ and instead of listening to the guitar, play it with everything else and then boost frequencies and find out where you're getting masking frequencies overlapping with the more important elements for that part of the song. So for example, a lot of this is going to be vocally driven, right? Like this. There's no room for the vocals to really live. So let me just show you. I'm just going to do this on the entire guitar bus just because it works so well. Instead of just soloing your guitars and saying, oh yeah, man, I want less mud, and then I want more like in your face static or whatever. Like, don't do it this way. So let's play the song. I want you to not listen to the guitar while I'm sweeping these frequencies. Listen to the vocal, and let's find a spot where we can't understand the vocals anymore. Right there. This is where you want to cut. You don't want to just arbitrarily cut crap when it's in solo. Listen. It just punches a hole for the vocals to fit in there. That's what you want to do. Same thing with the low mids. Let's find a spot where it's stepping on the snare. The body of the snare is around 200 hertz, right? Like, we can't hear the punch of the snare anymore. This is where you're going to cut it. Now, if you were to listen to it in solo, it probably sounds like total trash, right? It's actually not too terrible. But I mean, so that's the basic idea. When you EQ the guitars, don't listen to guitars, listen to everything else. The second thing I want to point out is a lot of the guitar tone in rock and metal songs actually comes from the bass. So if you're sitting here and you're trying to you want the mix to sound more full, and you're boosting all this low energy in the guitars, what you're doing is you're just adding a lot of like cabinet resonance and rumble to the mix, and it's not going to be musical at all. Listen. Like, it just sounds like wind almost, like just blowing around. Instead, make a really gnarly bass tone. And what I like to do is I'll take a bass DI, and it's a nice clean DI, and then we'll filter off all of the high-end energy out of it. So, like, for example, I'm rolling off everything above 250 hertz and everything below 60 hertz. So I just have this little region here. And so this is all like the energy, the low energy for the mix right here. And then I just run it through a limiter and slam it so that we have really consistent fat low energy. And then once you have that, you blend that with the guitars, and all of a sudden now you have this really, really full low end from this clean DI that's feeding and complementing the guitars, and now you have this huge guitar sound. Right? So that's one thing. Now, the other thing I recommend doing is you can then duplicate this DI and then do the same strategy, but just work on the higher frequencies. So we're just going to basically run the bass through a distortion plugin. Okay? So in this case, Ryan, the engineer and the producer of this song, sent me a pre-distorted bass that just focuses on the treble bite of the bass guitar. So we can make it really, really, really attacky, really, really distorted, and it complements those distorted guitars, but it adds like this little honk to them that helps to make them stand out in the mix. And so I'm literally rolling off everything below 650 because we only want the attack to help complement the guitars. So check it out when we have that low bass and then the attack together. Bring in the guitars. Without the bass. See how thin the guitars sound when we take the bass out with the full mix? Cool. The last trick I want to share with you is to set up your guitars with sidechain compression and trigger that to the important elements of the drums. So specifically, first thing that comes to my mind is the snare. The snare is in a region where the guitar has a lot of energy, right? That 200 to 300 hertz, where that deep punch of the snare is. We want to make sure that the guitars aren't sucking all of that energy away from the snare. So I literally have waves C6 sidechained to my snare drum. And I have two frequencies selected. I have one that's centered right around 200 hertz, and I have one that is also centered around 550. So these are like the two regions where the snare has the most impact. And like I said, I just sidechain it right to the snare. So if I play the drums with the guitars, check this out. See that? So the secret with this is we need to have a fast attack and a fast release to make this work. Because you don't want the guitars to be pumpy, right? We want it to be unnoticeable. And so if it's too noticeable when the snare hits, the guitars sound like they duck away too far, then just go a little bit easier on the threshold, or you lower the range knob. That way you get a clean snap in body from the snare every time it hits, and you don't lose any of the warmth and power from those guitars. Okay, so really quickly, I just want to show you how to set up the sidechain for the guitars. So you're going to load the C6 plugin on the last slot of your guitar bus, and then you just need to make sure in Cubase you activate the sidechain. That will open up a send so we can go to the snare drum. So go to the snare here, and then go to sends, and then we can add a send to go right to this plugin. So we go to sidechains and guitar all sidechain. You just choose that, send it, and then the last thing we need to do, and this is something that I always forget to do, is down here, there's this little external, internal button. You have to put it on external, so that way it knows to look for the incoming snare signal that way. Otherwise, it's just going to act like a normal compressor. So you put all that stuff together, and this is what you get. I have, like I said, almost 180 tracks in this session, and you can hear every single element because we're not stepping on toes. We're not trying to flex our guitar tone, and instead, we're being smart about our EQ choices and making room for these elements. Question for you. What are you doing to make your metal guitars fit inside of a mix? Do you spend more time adjusting the tone or dialing in the amp settings, or do you go and approach it the way I showed in this video where you carve out the space out of the guitar to make it sit nicely in a mix? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to grab my favorite free plugin guide. The link to that is in the description. If you're still with me, thank you so much. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button because that tells YouTube that this video is actually helpful and it's going to show it to more people. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button because I put new videos out every single week, and that'll notify you when a new one goes live. If you'd like to support me in this channel, what you could do is just share this video or another one of my videos with an online community or some friends that might need help mixing their music. I'm sure they're going to find it super helpful. Thanks again for your time and attention today, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.